Ian can vote. We're not voting on subdivision stuff tonight, so are you comfortable voting? We have an election and we have a discussion. I don't know if we'll get to a vote on draft land use ordinances.
Yes.
And your input will be accepted on that. So amendments, so she is a voting member this evening. Amendments to the agenda, I have one, which is to hold an election. Are you here before we get started? Are you here for?
I'm with you.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. I didn't recognize you. If I put my glasses on, they fog up. So hold an election for officers. Do I have any nominations?
I'll nominate John Talbot for chair.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please raise a hand. Okay, thank you very much. It's not going to take 3 days and 6 elections like the House of Representatives.
It's not over yet.
We're still working on it. So the next office is vice president. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to nominate Juliet Kaplinger for vice chair.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please raise a hand. And again, 4-0. So we are now up to acceptance of the minutes of, and thank you all, acceptance of the minutes of prior meetings, December 7th, 2020. Oh, 1 second. Hey, Devin.
Yeah.
Turn it on, please.
Yeah, we're live.
Thank you. I always forget to tell them to turn it on. Okay, so acceptance of the minutes of the December 7th meeting. Any comments? If not, I'll accept the motion.
I'll move to accept them as presented.
I'll second.
Moved and second. Any discussion? If not, those in favor, please raise a hand.
I'll abstain.
And 1 abstention. So 3 in favor, 1 abstention. Informational exchange on non-agenda items.
I will just
Officials.
report to the board that you may recall in the comprehensive plan, there's an addendum that says at any point, if the town issues more than 45 permits, which used to be the building cap, or approves 100 lots, that would call for a special town meeting and consideration of a moratorium and development of a growth management plan. This year, past year, the town issued 34 single-family home permits. So it has increased. It was averaging around 15 maybe 5 years ago. In the last 5 years, it's jumped up to 20, 22 last year, and now it's up 35. So it is increasing, but still well within the limit.
Okay, and I don't think we approved any subdivisions last year,
Nope.
did we?
There were 2 subdivisions the year before, and we've worked on this subdivision since April of last year. But
Okay.
oh, you did have the Brown Road 1 lot.
It would be interesting to know how many occupancy permits had been issued.
Perhaps
To
the,
complement those 34, whether that tell me how many are still really
Pending.
pending, they're not finished. And
Yeah, there are 3 or 4 subdivisions that are still building out.
yeah,
So
yeah, definitely.
I know like Bowie Hill, I drove through today, all 5 of those lots are far from finished or, do you know how many occupancy permits were issued 2022? Alan is our code enforcement.
No, off the top of my head. I have, no, not occupancy.
Okay,
So can we define that again? I know I've asked before. So occupancy is built, people are moved in or they're about to move in, right? It's like a building permit almost.
Ready to move in.
Right.
You can't
So-
occupy a building unless it's been inspected.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, no matter how many subdivisions we approve in a year, they might not occupy for who knows, right? Because they have to build them and
Some period of
everything. So
time.
there's a little bit of a delay there. But that is good info. Interesting.
To give you an example, the Truman Day subdivision, which was approved for 12, they have been doing about 2 houses a year.
Mhm.
So based on that, it could take them up to 6 years to complete that subdivision.
They're on lot 10 right now.
But yeah, and then
Yeah.
on the other end of it, the Royalsboro one, they got approved and
I know they did it all
got
1
full
year,
within-
6 of them, like, yeah,
Right.
it was amazing.
So yeah.
what would else be interesting to see 6 months from now, where we are in terms of the economy? Is this building, in fact, going to slow down? You know, if we've got Bowie Hill, we've got, if Deer Creek passes, you know, are those going to fill? What's the housing market going to be like near term? So, okay, anything
That's
else? Okay, the only comment I have, and I apologize, I came down with COVID just before the last selectman meeting, and two things, I'm past the window of infection, but I'm wearing this out of, as Dr. Fauci says, an overabundance of caution, and I did not get a chance to talk to the selectmen, but they know what we'd like to do in terms of these things, and I'm hoping that if they had any objections, the town manager or Kevin or somebody would have come back and said, time out, stop, try a different route. So
Regarding the housing thing.
the affordable housing in particular. So having said that, are there any residents who would like to speak on things that are not on the agenda? Alan, I guess I should, did you have anything you wanted to say as the code enforcement guy, as a town official? Are there any non-residents who would like to say something on things other than the agenda? Seeing none, the next continuing business is the completeness and substantive review of Deer Creek. They've asked to be tabled. They're still waiting for their permits from the state and that information. So I believe we need and you'll have to recuse yourself probably, but a motion to table item 5A, completeness review of Deer Creek Crossing. Motion, please.
Actually, I've got a question.
Sure.
Or maybe after, but timeline, is there any restrictions?
They have 6 months to file for the final plan after getting a preliminary approval. However, if they are awaiting outside agency permits, as in this case, that can be extended.
Yeah, okay.
Any other questions, comments, discussion?
So they're looking to table this until February meeting.
February meeting.
Which is that going to be on the 1st or is it going to be on the 8th?
I think we always say first Wednesday.
So
We
it'll
can
be the
change that
first.
to 1st of February.
I'll move that we table actually 5A and 5B until February 1st.
I'll second.
Second, any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of tabling 5A, the substantive review and the completeness, raise a hand. 3-0, 1 abstention. So
I think we should also note on that was at the request of the applicant.
at the request of, so we add that to the motion. And we go, and I think we've got an email from their engineer today that said they wanted to do that, so. Okay, the next discussion is, I'm sure nobody has forgotten over the holidays, but there are two areas that we've been working on, and the Conservation Commission been working on for articles changes to the Land Use Commission. One is the Affordable Housing Survey, Affordable Housing Articles, and then the other one is resource protection. And then I guess there's one more that I keep forgetting about, is just cleaning up some of the language on private roads. And so, Mr. Thabarge, if you'd kind of like to go through the plan on how we're going to do that.
It was in
Talking
your
about doing.
packet, the information on all of these draft amendments, but I printed out some copies and some more clearer maps, which I think will be a little bit easier to read. So I'm going to distribute those to you.
And while he's doing that, I'd like to thank Mr. Thabarge for putting in a lot of work, answering a lot of specific, what does this mean to my property questions. We were talking about how useful George has been, but no, thank you, man. That's one of the things, there's probably been,
Is that yours?
that is George's.
Okay, here you,
Oh, wait,
I know that's yours.
no, he's got one, we're good. So George, I'd like to thank you for taking that on. I know Mr. Roy from the Conservation Commission is, and their chairman has also answered a bunch of questions, so I appreciate everybody working with the residents of Durham, and in the case of some people are not residents of Durham who own land.
So I did pass out these printed copies, and we'll just start with the first potential set of draft amendments for the land use ordinance for the town meeting. Will be held on April 1st. So as you mentioned, John, we've been working on the resource protection district boundary recalibration. And so what I have done, as you will recall, there was a public meeting on December 6th, the Conservation Commission held. There was a lot of discussion. And So now we need to prepare, and also the planning board held in October, similar workshop on information meeting on the affordable housing component. So,
And private roads.
yeah, and we did discuss that as well. So where you are now in the process is the select board is going to be looking for and welcoming a recommendation from the planning board on all proposed ordinance amendments. And so we've kind of been working on this time frame of they have to do the warrant articles, the actual drafts of everything have to be ready. You have to hold a public hearing. It goes out in the town report. So there's quite a very precise time frame that we've been following. So this is kind of the meeting where you get the first chance to formally review the draft language. And then hopefully if you can make a decision on this tonight, that would be great. It would be communicated to the select board. If you want more time, you have the February meeting as well, but they need the language at the latest by February 14th, you mentioned, John, in order to put it into the town report and send it out to the citizens. So
And the language is the actual verbiage of the
Yes.
article that
Yeah.
the town would vote
the
on.
warrant article, I believe, is what goes into the town report. I'm not sure. I don't think the amendments do, but there probably would be summaries that will go into the town report. So if you want to start, there were 3 parts proposed. The first is resource protection. The second is the affordable housing. And the third is private ways, which is kind of like you mentioned, John, cleaning up some of that, clarifying and simplifying the process for review of what are known in most towns as private ways. So if you want to start with the resource protection.
Let's do that because I know we have 2 folks from the conservation, the COSCOM. I just want to point out that I'm wearing new swag.
I see that.
Mr. Roy is always appreciative of my Cubs outfits.
I don't know if I say appreciative.
Yeah, we'll pretend.
You got a wide selection. I know.
Well, you do. Okay, I'm sorry to distract the crowd.
Okay, so starting with what I've labeled as Part 1A. And you may recall that there has been discussion of there are two phases of the recalibration. The first originally contemplated was correcting the boundaries for areas that property owners had land that was in resource protection with no basis in terms of the data. And then that would be what had been considered phase 1. Phase 2 would then look at applying the recommended criteria of the comprehensive plan toward all properties within the town. So there was discussion at the last town meeting, and they ended up not approving the first phase. And so this year, I think everybody's on the same page to go to the town meeting with both phases at one town meeting. Now, the select board has indicated they are insistent on having 2 separate votes, but after the public informational meeting with the Conservation Commission, the chairman, Kevin Neto, basically suggested that perhaps putting the full implementation per the recommendations of the comprehensive plan would be appropriate to consider first. And then if that fails, then in order to give relief to those property owners that have restrictions based on inaccurate data, that would be kind of the fallback position in a second vote. So that is pretty much what's before you. I
Extra
have,
question,
yes,
So on that, if we do the full thing
Yeah.
first and it is voted down,
Yep.
we would do the limited, just the properties that are impacted.
correct.
And then would the second vote follow that as well?
The third vote.
Third vote, sorry, the one after that, like the people that would be added to, or would that just be tabled?
Well, the first vote would be fully implement the recommendations of the comprehensive plan, which would both put in the new land that is subject outside the existing resource protection
I guess
district.
Never mind. It doesn't, it's like and or, never mind.
Yeah,
It would, if
So,
the
like-
first one fails and the second one passes, then obviously
There
the
probably
third one is,
There would not be a.
there wouldn't be a third one because it doesn't sound like there'd be a third article.
not at this town meeting. That
Correct.
doesn't say that you can't continue to explore the expansion.
Right.
And I think one of the issues is how much research, how much public participation has been done. Obviously, we're doing a lot more this year than we did last year, just for a number of circumstances. But, there are some parts of this, and that kind of leads to what I'd like to propose, or at least offer for consideration tonight as an option. So during the public participation process, a lot of people came, about 30 plus people came to the information meeting. About 20 of them signed up to say, I want more detailed information. And I've been doing that with using GIS analysis to show them what the effect would be on their property, positive or negative. And some of them have raised concerns and questions about particularly the beginning with Habitat 6+ rating system. And we did find in one case where the mapping that the Greater Portland Council of Governments had translated, I think, we're not exactly sure what happened, the beginning with Habitat data from the state. And we found an area of 10-acre wetlands that was actually upland, a fairly substantial area. I did check the rest of the map in terms of the National Wetland Inventory to see if there were other areas with that kind of discrepancy, and I didn't really find any. So, but in any case, the comprehensive plan recommends that for areas that are rated beginning with Habitat 6+ multiple natural resource areas, the wording of the comprehensive plan, and I can put it up on the screen, is basically to say these areas should be considered for resource protection, or another response would be to require mandatory clustering in subdivisions to try to preserve open space in those areas. So the comprehensive plan talks about two different options. And at that informational meeting, the chairman, Kevin Netto, discussed with me the fact that there are 6 proposed criteria, those being floodplains, shore areas of shoreland zoning required by the state, the within 100 feet of a stream, a perennial stream, also wetlands of 10 or more acres, and also currently contained in the ordinance under shoreland zoning are these moderate to high value waterfowl and wading bird habitats. So 5 of the 6 criteria are currently in the land use ordinance, but they're not being applied on a townwide basis. They're only being applied, those specific criteria are only being applied within areas governed by mandatory shoreline zoning. So Kevin pointed out that the beginning with Habitat is somewhat different in its status than the other 5, and that would be something adding a new criterion that's not currently in the land use ordinance. So what I've provided is an opportunity for you to discuss and hopefully come up to your own conclusion of whether it would warrant putting 2 different options before the select board for their decision. And so what I've done is prepared, the criteria would be exactly the same. And what we would do is take the same criteria that are in the shoreland zoning and put it into the establishment of districts. So it applied all on a townwide basis, not just within the shoreland zoned areas. And then the first map I show includes that beginning with Habitat 6 rating. And I'll put that up on the screen so that members of the public watching might be able to see that. So this is this map, and I'm going to go to a bigger view.
And Mr., while you're doing that, Mr. Lafarge, my understanding from the IT guy is that this is being streamed, but only the voice is being streamed. So if folks at home are watching live, you cannot see the maps at this point. And he's working on trying to get that for the next time, but it will be on YouTube probably starting tomorrow or Friday. So
But it's also in the agenda packet.
it's in the agenda package.
Right.
Thank you.
That's
So on
right, which
page
is available
whatever.
online. These maps are a little bit different. I've worked on them to get them to be a little bit clearer than the ones that were in the packet, and also be able to zoom in closer. So, so this does include, you'll see the last criterion down here. The gray is the existing, the red dash gray areas are the existing resource protection district as of 2020. And then these are those criteria that I mentioned, including beginning with Habitat 6+ multiple resources. And if you look at this, and Joe and I have discussed and have responded to a couple of property owners in terms of a couple of issues. One is this semicircular area, which would be a full circle, is Blanding turtle habitat, and Joe can explain the technical status of that species and the habitat protection programs that are available. But this is entirely new resource protection zoning based on that one criterion. And it is I did some measurements today. This is about 100 acres here that's not currently in land. There's some conservation easement areas out there. And on this side, down here, that's approximately 300 acres. And then there's some more over on this part of Runaround Pond periphery. And those areas right there are about 300 plus acres. And then one of the landowners expressed concerns about the beginning with Habitat 6+ on these properties. Two of the property owners had questions about it. And there's about another 40 acres over there. So somewhere between 300 and 400 acres of land would be restricted by this, and by this one criterion alone. So one question would be, so 3 reasons to consider it, at least, for not including it in this round is: number 1, this is a new criterion compared to the others. Number 2, the rating system that's been developed by Inland Fisheries and Wildlife is a qualitative assessment based on quantitative data. So again, Joe's the expert on this, can explain it much better detail, but generally, as I understand it, they look at the different values of wildlife habitat, of endangered species habitat, of wetlands, of deer yard. Each of these are assigned scores, and then they do a composite score depending on how much overlap of those values there are. So that is a qualitative assessment based on the judgment of the experts of the wildlife. But at the same time, landowners are affected by this. And at the very least, it's important that they be able to understand the basis for that evaluation. And then the voters of Durham get to weigh in. Do we think that those are the important values that should be, and is this rating system what we should be using to determine whether people can develop their land or not? So what I did was at least offer the option, and that this one criterion seems to be the one that is most questionable. The second map actually just drops that I passed out to you. And so you'll see on the bottom, and I'll go up on the screen for the same thing. I'll have to switch over to the, excuse me, the second map, which is this one. So you'll see it, I've dropped the beginning with Habitat 6+ from the bottom, and then that large circular, semicircular area around Runaround Pond, all those farm fields out there has dropped, as well as these buffers around these 10-acre wetlands up off Poland Road, or Pownell Road, excuse me. So those are pretty much the areas that were not currently in resource protection that would be added through beginning with Habitat. So my offering for you to consider is to present both of these maps to the select board, and then let them make the call on what they want to put before the voters.
I would actually like to kind of counter that and see what you guys think about this. Instead of proposing both of these to the select board, let's propose one, if we can.
I think we have to
What, both or
propose
one?
one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Instead of
I think
both.
we have to make a recommendation.
As a planning board, I agree.
I would unanimously support that. I think I understand what you're trying to say. And I think in the discussions I've had, I think their preference would be, the selectmen would prefer that we come with a recommendation, whether they accept it or not is still their
Exactly.
That's
their call, but that we recommend 1A and 1AB or whatever these two are. So
And then can I, a couple follow-ups? So that BWH, begin with Habitat land, is what that you were talking about is mainly around Runaround, right? That's where that.
There are some
Polygons.
scattered areas.
I mean, the big one that you were talking about.
Yes, that's
um,
right. Yeah.
Which is where the habitat is coming from. And then,
Answer any questions.
yeah, and then,
I have a hard time projecting my voice that a lot.
And then I just had a thought, and it might be way too late to bring this up, but because we have to vote on this, right? This is going forward. And actually, this is a question for Joe. This EWH area, it sounds like it's mostly for wildlife, right? And is it?
Before he answers, Mr. Roy, if you'd step up to and I apologize, I'm not sure your partner's name, but if you, Mike, if you want to, please just introduce yourself as Joe Roy of Durham or.
Yeah.
Let me just explain my
Yep.
whole thing, and then you can take it from there. But what I'm wondering is what the BWH land is helping to protect or conserve. And then also if the issues with the impact, if that's from just development or if it's from continual use. Like if we could maybe provide some sort of mitigation in these areas to anyone that wants to develop, like you need to do a survey early on, like we do wetland delineations, right? You need to do some sort of turtle survey. If you have one, then we have to do something about it. If you don't have one, then you might be okay. Or if it's long-term use of that area, that's the issue.
So I'll just introduce myself, Joseph Roy, live on Pinkham Brook Road, and I'm on the Conservation Commission, kind of here speaking on behalf of them today. So the first question really has a few different answers or a few extended response. The beginning with habitat co-occurrence model, like George explained, evaluates all the different habitat criteria and then affixes a coefficient to them, so a number value based off of its level of importance. And then from a mapping standpoint, all these numbers get mapped on top of each other, and where the numbers accumulate to score 6 or higher is where the agency recommends some sort of resource protection, or not necessarily recommends resource protection, but just considering that as a valuable resource. And then our comprehensive plan took it to the next level and said resource protection or mandatory clustering. So in the example, George, you can pull back up the map. In the example
I
of,
did just want to show you that I do have the comprehensive plan recommendations that
Yeah.
includes some of the suggestions that that you had just mentioned,
Yeah.
Juliet. So we can look at those as well, but I'll go back to the
Oh,
map.
so if we go back to the, right there. So in the example where George's hand is right there, that is primarily because that there is a rare species. So on the co-occurrence map, essentially if there's a there are several different designations for rare species, including critically imperiled, imperiled, and rare. So in the case of a critically imperiled species, its presence alone in the habitat that it requires or the buffer around it scores 3. So it's really easy to start accumulating towards 6 in that case. In this case, we've got a rare turtle that scores quite high, and it has a buffer around it because while they're located generally along streams, their foraging habitat and movements are encapsulated really by about a 750-foot buffer to where they might be located on the water resource. So like in the example down there, while the turtle might be most often found in the stream or nesting near the stream, it utilizes that large habitat array and the variety of habitats to meet all of its life goals. And then if we look at the top there in the western half, a lot of those are because this model also affixes a certain level of points to currently undeveloped habitat. So Inland Fisheries and Wildlife went through and put a spatial buffer on all roads in the state, all homes, all parking lots, all everything, and then calculated the number of acres that a habitat block is part of. That is maybe 1,000 acres where there is no interruption in terms of preventing wildlife habitat movements and provides a large block. And the reason they did that was because a lot of critically imperiled wildlife and certain wildlife species in general just have spatial requirements. So while some species might be able to exist in a 1-acre patch, things if we think about like our moose and stuff like that need about a 4,000 acre undeveloped habitat block. So one of the scores that is just awarded in this is for undeveloped habitat blocks. So areas that are over that are 200 to 600 acres score a value of 1. Anything under 200 acres doesn't score a value. From 600 to 1200, it scores a value of 2, and 1200 and more, it scores a value of 3. West Durham, being relatively undeveloped, has a lot of blocks that are in that 1200 acre or plus. So in the example in the kind of the western corner there, those areas are already scoring 3 points because of the nature of it being undeveloped wildlife habitat. So it only takes 1 or 2 other occurrences of important natural resources for them to break that 6+ threshold. And the reason the model was designed like this is because while you have certain species that or certain blocks of habitat or certain characteristics that on their own might not warrant special attention, where there's a lot of overlapping features shows that there's something about that property or that land, parcel that is providing the opportunity for a lot of important things to overlap. So just by the nature of its richness and diversity, it might be considered something that you would want to protect. So it's not necessary. I know there's a long answer, but it's not necessarily just wildlife species, but a slew of other different things. So I think at one point we had a copy of the beginning with habitat maps here, but essentially other things that it looks at is it provides scores to groundwater aquifers, like it provides a point. So if you're on an aquifer on a large undeveloped habitat block, you're already sitting at 4 points for that land. Provides protection for wetlands of 10 acres plus. It provides one point for those. Buffers around rivers and streams, it provides 1 point for there. So it would never trigger just that being resource protection, but it just accumulates towards it. Endangered species, rare plants, rare and endangered natural communities, and a significant wildlife habitat. So there's a lot of things that are added into that.
Yeah, so and just to know, aquifer protection, the aquifer part is a really good, important part. So that polygon that we were just talking about, the northern part of that circle.
Over here?
Right there, that is the aquifer as well. So that it's just a bunch of things, right? It's the aquifer, it's also a budding runaround, that system, and then you've also got the species. So that's why so I was just answering one of my own questions.
Yeah.
I just looked at the aquifer map.
Yeah.
And that's why.
Now that you point that out, I also think that that area is relatively undeveloped too. So it's probably scoring at least a point or
Probably
two.
that too as well.
Because I'm sure if I remember correctly, I think there's at least a couple hundred acres that is fully intact. There's some tree farm out there and stuff like that. So.
And I also would like to point out too, just a couple things. I've been looking, these maps are very helpful, George. If you go up to the upper left that we were talking about,
This one?
Yeah, right there.
This area?
So see the green and then that gray in the
Okay,
middle
this
of
green
the,
is
yes, that
beginning
green.
with habitat, identified wetlands of 10 or more acres.
Mhm.
The darker green is either floodplain or stream protection. And then this color here, which is the same as over on here, is buffer around 10-acre wetlands.
Right. So what I was just getting at is the bright green encapsulates that gray polygon in the middle, which would make, if our vote tonight is between this map and the one without the gray, right?
Mhm.
If the gray.
Well, no, the gray is the current resource protection.
No, the dark green gray color.
This
The
gray,
beginning with
this-
habitat.
yes,
olive,
multiple-
The
yeah,
6+
olive,
habitat, I think is what.
that color.
This one includes the 6+. And
Yes.
so this area here goes away around this lighter green, as well as this kind of olive color goes away around. These are all 10-acre wetlands. This is a system. And this was that area that I mentioned in the maps we were originally using. This entire area was included in the 10-acre plus wetland.
Yeah.
And that was removed based on our review, working with one of the private landowners. So, yeah. So the two options are either to go forward with this inclusive of the beginning with habitat recommended buffer from the wetland systems that go through this area, or to put it in without that beginning with habitat 6+, which would remove this olive.
And the one more thing I wanted to note is that the original existing resource protection district that's highlighted in like the red dots or the
Yeah.
red lines.
Mhm.
A lot of this, beginning with habitat, olive color, some of it was contained within that previous existing resource protection area.
Actually, for this area out here.
No, I'm looking more, sorry, I'm getting out of that
In
area.
that area.
Oh, you are,
but
Like if
okay.
you go to
Back
the
to-
right, yep, right in there.
You can see the boundary of the current resource protection goes around here, run around pond.
And then also to the
Up-
right.
up to
more
this
to the
area.
Yeah,
east.
It stops right there and it stops right in here. It does not include this area, other than down here where you got a lot of wetland systems and streams, but this part up here is not
And then to the
currently.
east, a lot of what was,
Over to the other side of town, you mean?
yeah, so a lot of the area that we were cutting out.
This is all area that was based solely on the floodplain mapping. That would all be pulled out.
Yeah, so Julia, I think part of what you're getting at in terms of like some of this protection in the western part, that the only thing overlapping the gray is the 6+ co-occurrence, is in part driven by the original 2002 ordinance. So it stated protections around, it named a few streams, the floodplain, and then it said areas as defined as swampy. So that's why you will notice that a lot of that co-occurs with wetland complexes. Now, whether they were mapped as 10 acres or larger, it just says swampy. So whomever delineated that feature, that was what they were going off of. So it would make sense that there would be some areas that are only captured because of the way the beginning with habitat co-occurrence model works, awarding points to those larger wetland complexes, awarding points to those undeveloped habitat, awarding points to riparian buffers and stuff like that. And it's pretty common in my experience for municipalities to focus a lot of protection around water resources. They're pretty easy to see. People connect it with clean drinking water and things like that. So
Cool. And then my last part of that whole thing was just bringing it back to the comp plan. You mentioned that mitigation might have been mentioned in here, like,
Yes. Okay, so currently, in, any subdivision or conditional use application does require them checking with the applicant to check with the Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife for screening to see if there are any known mapped resources, including rare and endangered plant and animal habitat. So the comprehensive plan, and you will recall, this is based on the old land use ordinance that was in effect at the time that had nothing in there effectively to deal with a lot of these issues. So we've already adopted the new subdivision regulations, which include the requirements for checking with those state agencies. So this includes required analysis for the subdivision based on those maps. Now, the actual reference to the beginning with habitat maps are not included in the current land use ordinance. That's one of the recommendations of the comprehensive plan that was adopted to try to establish that. So yes, there is guidance in the comprehensive plan that calls for evaluation of these issues as part of the review of any subdivision or conditional use.
Which is in the land use ordinance now.
It is in the land use ordinance that you consult with the state agencies, but it doesn't give the specific guidance that's recommended in the comprehensive
because this
plan.
map isn't in there.
Yeah, to say what you do with that information.
So maybe a suggestion, if we go forward with this and the vote is negative, it's voted down, then maybe we go back to this.
Yes.
And bring up this map
Absolutely.
again and at least.
Yeah,
have-
because, I've been working with communities for 40 years on these issues, and Falmouth started with vernal pools and major open space programs. And their comprehensive plan and many comprehensive plans in the state of Maine recognize that zoning is one mechanism to try to protect land, but there are voluntary conservation easements, many of which have been done in Durham. There are land acquisition programs. Durham has not done that. Falmouth has done a lot of that. There are design regulations that you can deal with, like, say, for example, the Blanding turtle habitat. In the early days of the vernal pool, it was the same thing. That 750-foot zone around a vernal pool is a lot of land. It's like, is it 40 acres? 20 acres, 40 acres? I can't remember off the top of my head. What's that? Yeah, yeah.
It
So,
depends
but
on
in
the
any
envelope.
case, when that would go through a DEP or local town review, they would require them to hire a biologist to be on their design team. And in one case, in Falmouth, they actually, you've probably heard of these wildlife crossings over highways. Well, they actually created an amphibian course through culverts under the road, following their migration paths. So there are mitigation measures that can be done on the big scale, resource protection, but there's also techniques that can be incorporated into the design review. Generally, obviously, that's not going to be as effective as acquisition or resource protection, but there are other mitigation measures that can be looked at.
I have a couple of process, whatever the right term is, but on the two maps, the 100-year floodplain, Androscoggin River shoreline, runaround pond shoreline, Hunt Stream border, everything on these maps except beginning with Habitat 6+ is already, I mean, there's wetland maps out there, there's floodplain maps out there. Are these already defined areas? State maps, whatever it may be. I don't know what the right term is
Well,
there.
those 6 criteria are currently listed in the land use ordinance with applicability to the shoreline zone areas.
Okay.
So, yes, so
We're
there
not
are,
adding anything new with,
Not-
with those first.
not as a concept, but you're now looking to apply those same criteria to areas out of mandatory shoreline zone areas.
Yeah, because if you look at it's mostly green and yellow here, but those are areas out you look at the dotted gray, everything that's green that's outside of that is an area that the comp plan has highlighted as important to protect, but isn't currently receiving protection. So like George is saying, the concept of protecting those isn't really new because it's something that people already think about, but it's applying it in this manner. And in terms of the mapped resources themselves, the Beginning with Habitat program with Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife's purpose is to collate all of these important resources to have them in one place where municipalities, land trusts, and private landowners can go to get the information, which is what the town did when they got this base sort of data. So the floodplain maps from FEMA, some of the wetland maps are from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. The inland wading bird and waterfowl maps are done by our state agency, the Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. The co-occurrence model is done by Beginning with Habitat. So they're all mapped, and that data is publicly available, and they have their scientific criteria that cause them to be mapped in the way that they are. So, and like this data, like this map right here, there's a version of this available online for every town in the state of Maine already collated. So
I guess my question more specifically is that on the first 6 criteria, those are already, this question, are those defined at, like you said, you go to floodplain map, go to wetlands map, it's there. You go to and shoreline just says 200 feet off of that. That's a well-defined area. The Beginning with Habitat, the 6+, is that is,
Let me just clarify
I
that.
guess I'm looking for a very specific.
That is mapped as well, as Joe indicated, in the state inventories. The difference is that the prior 5 criteria are currently part of Durham's regulatory program.
Okay.
Beginning with Habitat 6+ is not currently part of Durham's regulatory program. It is supported by the comprehensive plan.
So what's being added then is the 6+ Habitat.
As a completely new regulatory
requirement.
component.
And then the other thing is, it's a little hard bouncing back and forth, because when Mr. Roy was talking, there were some areas that I think that maybe eliminated that I maybe hadn't noticed. Could you just very quickly show us
You want to go back to the map?
what goes
without-
away, I think is what I'm asking here, is I mean, some of it are really big and obvious, but and some of them are overlapped by
So
other things that
gray.
protected.
So areas like this that are gray, that don't have, wherever the green doesn't exist, this all goes away from resource protection. So this big patch here, this is a large component of this is just an old swampy area, which is probably why it was included as swampy.
Yeah.
You know, some of these little areas along the stream because the floodplain, the FEMA map has been tightened up with new technology. Some of these areas are getting a little bit more defined. Couple areas down here, same thing here. A lot of area around streams that doesn't have a co-occurrence of another resource is getting tightened up a little bit because of laser tech. It's essentially lasers from the
I got you.
sky and mapping. Like a little pocket in the middle of here, same deal. Removed. But then, if past, this other stuff would remain. So realistically, the big place is right here.
Mhm.
It's like that's where the big.
Were you asking about that or about the difference between keeping, beginning with Habitat 6 in or taking it out?
Yeah, I guess what I'm asking is if the way, and I thank you very much, because I didn't realize what he had just explained. But on whatever 1AB is, whatever, so you've got the one where it includes 6+, you've got the one that doesn't include 6+. But much of what Mr. Roy just pointed to, so if we vote,
Okay,
Or
so
is
I
it-
can show you with and without. Okay, so this is beginning with habit. Let me put on the others. So I'm going to include the Androscoggin runaround 100-year flood, 100-foot stream, inland fisheries, inland waterfowl. And so if you take off the beginning with habitat 6+, that's what goes away, if that's what you were.
yeah, I think that's
exploring.
what what I was asking is if
That's with it,
tonight we vote,
that's without it.
yeah, so if we vote for the second version of the map without 6+, and the town votes for the second version without 6+, a lot of the things that you said go away don't really go away.
Well, yes, like for example, here and here, protection for that endangered species would go away.
That would go away.
And that is protection explicitly listed from the town.
For the 6+.
Regulatory authority, whether you then have a discussion later on about saying, through our consultation with inland fisheries and wildlife, we found that this is, anyone who's trying to develop in there will, even if this doesn't go through,
Right.
will eventually be informed, there's an endangered species.
Sure.
And then this is just a way to say, we're setting up that process now versus later. And then these areas would go away. The protection around these would go away because of a couple things. So right around here is, this is a large undeveloped habitat block, 1,200, it's like 1,400 acres. And then there's also some deer wintering habitat in there that scores a little bit of a point. So then protection on that would go away. So it's not as if like everything is receiving protection. That's what the beginning with habitat tool is developed for, is to try to help put a number and quantify certain habitat characteristics. So there is a little bit of stuff mostly up here and then down in this.
Done by runaround pond. No, I got you that, but when you were talking about things going away that were much bigger, where you talk about like the old swampy area and stuff like that,
Yeah.
that does not go away with the second version of the map.
So the one on the east side of town goes away with both versions of the map. So the gray,
Right here. Yes, the inside
This up here,
is
John,
gone.
is,
and
this
the same
this
over
does
there.
not rank 6+,
Yeah.
this gray area
anything
here.
that's gray.
Yeah, they're close colors. Gray and that green are close colors.
No, I got you, but is this your newer version that took away
This is the GIS from which I produce those, so I can turn things on and off with
yeah, I
this.
guess if you would take away the Blanding turtle version, for lack of a better term
Okay.
here.
There.
Those areas are, so if we vote to accept this map, those areas are still protected, correct? me if I'm-
No.
George, could you turn off the?
Yes,
resource
okay, so if we turn off the old resource protection, this would be the new resource protection.
But that's my question. This is the map that we would vote on, right? And this is the version.
Yeah, so the
without
final
Blanding turtle.
result, and just show you the whole thing, the final result, with the beginning with habitat, that's what the resource protection district would be. Without the beginning with habitat 6+, that's what the resource
So,
protection
I
would
think
be.
maybe I can clarify. What he's showing here in gray is just what is being taken out.
For reference.
For
Yes.
reference. That would not be, this area would not be on the resource map that the voters
Okay, so
would
this
vote
is
on.
not the map we would, if we did this, but this is not the map. That would be the map,
Right there is what we would show the
That
public.
would
We
be
would
the
show the
final
public.
result.
Yes.
and that would be with,
But I think it's important to show to the public
the areas that would be taken out.
Absolutely, but
Yeah.
I do
As well
hear what
as
he's
put in.
saying. It's kind of confusing.
Yep.
You know, like this looks a lot more clean
Yeah.
than that, but it is very important to show them that, you know, oh,
Yeah,
look at all of this that's being taken out
Yeah,
as
and if you
well.
show-
No, I'm not arguing that. I
Right,
guess what
right.
I'm saying is that if this map that has landing turtle and all this other stuff in it, if that passes the town, this is what it would be.
Yeah, and I think what you're getting at
But if,
would be that it might be helpful to show to landowners and people in town something that has that gray turned off. I understand the importance to making sure there is a map that shows this is the existing, a map showing what this is proposed change, and then a map showing what this is what the final would look like. Because I actually just learned this recently. About 30% of the population has some sort of a green-red color blindness. So it makes that a little bit difficult when there's like the grays and stuff in there. But if we showed a third map that just said completely what the new one could look like, that might help clarify because you just see that things disappear.
because I think that does make it, to me, it makes a difference because, and maybe I missed it when we were talking about it. This is the second map that you gave us. To me, I struggle to see, other than the Blanding Turtle area here and a little bit up in the northwest corner, what the difference was. But the reality is it is significantly different, not that
Yeah.
it's wrong.
And I think that with like the map we have on our paper here, when it's close, it's easy at hand. We can look at it. We can kind of start discerning some of that stuff. But I think if we retain the old district on all the maps, for some people, they're going to look at all of this and think, wow, that is a lot more stuff in resource protection, because they might not see the red line is defined, or they might not see the gray. And there's been definitely a few questions where someone's just like, oh, now that I see the map closer, I understand.
Let me just bring into the discussion another aspect of this that needs to be considered, and that is that it is obviously critically important that the public be able to understand what they're voting on. But equally important is that whatever is voted on is carefully worded and documented so that when it goes into effect, there's no confusion about what was adopted. So that's why I think it's important. And do you provide 5 maps? Do you provide 1 map? If you show 1 map, it's important to say this is what goes in and this is what comes out on the ground. That is part of what I'm driving at to get these maps to presentation,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
so that legally
Yeah.
it's clear what was taken in and what was put out.
Well,
Maybe an idea is to present what the actual map would look like to the voters, and then like have a table on the side like we always do, show it in a presentation ahead of time. But like, if you want to look at it, there's maps that show what was taken out, there's maps that show what was put in.
Right.
Yeah.
But this is
And we
what
can
you're
put all
voting
that on the website
Yeah,
too.
and I think a good approach is, especially because George has done all the heavy lifting already, actually getting the date shape files and stuff like that. I think a good approach is to show a map that shows existing resource protection, then show this map that George has created, whether the planning board decides the version beginning with habitat or plus 6+ or not. Show this one that shows everything, so you can see that transpose on itself, but then show what the final map would look like, so then people can see current, proposed change, final result. So then people can kind of look through and see those changes. And for a lot of people, what they're going to want to do is find their parcel and kind of check on each map and say, okay. And, I think that shows the importance of why we've been doing so much more outreach this time
And you
around, 'cause it
have, I
helps
mean,
clear.
I commend you guys, Conscom had a great meeting that I think was fairly well attended, and I've seen a lot of emails going back and forth. I like your idea. I think what is confusing, at least to me, is so article, whatever number it is, 1A, whatever, article 4, 5, 6, when it goes up there, you're first gonna show maps of this is the existing. Again, all questions that you'd show a map that says this is what resource protection looks like today. The article that is up for a vote right now, this is what it will look like.
That's the
If
existing
you
resource
accept it.
protection.
That's the existing.
Yep.
And what I would say is, it is hard to compare them side by side, maybe without 2 screens. And you see, I think what I would say the second map would say Article 4, or whatever it may be, this is what it's gonna be, and I would take off, leave, if you want a landing turtle on there, leave those things on there, but take out the Great Swamp of Durham, take out all that stuff, and you should, I
So
saw
just
it.
show the existing map and then shut that off and show the proposed.
Oh, Jordan, you
Sorry.
can clear.
Right.
That is proposed without.
Well,
landing,
That's the
right?
proposed,
That's
without the
proposed
landing.
without the 6
Let me
plus
put it on
three.
there. There we go.
So you're saying, what I think what you're suggesting, John, is the gray map and then this map, say boom.
If this is the map that
Or
we accept
boom.
tonight, if not, then if,
The only problem with that is the one that I just pointed out to, is that would not create as clear a record of showing a single map that shows what's taken in and what's taken out. That would be my only concern.
I mean,
but
so,
is that
so
not,
can I jump in here? Right. So at the end of the day, what's going in the ordinance does not have that gray line. Right?
If it gets passed, that gray line would go away.
Right. So that's what's winding up in the ordinance.
Yeah.
So that's what should be voted on.
yes,
If you want the other two maps for reference,
Mhm.
put them in, but that is what should be attached to the warrant article. Right?
yes,
Yeah.
or without
Yes.
landing, to whichever one we
I-
want.
And I agree, George, that the other pieces are really important so people understand what they're voting on, but that is what is going in the ordinance. That is what should be attached to the warrant article. Right?
I agree.
Yeah,
That's-
Okay.
that's what
To
I'm
me,
thinking
that
too.
then tells the code enforcement or us as a planning board, look at your inside landing turtle area, what's going on there.
Okay, so for whatever version of the map goes, you just want to have this map and then have a supplement, which would be perhaps with that or both.
Yeah, I wouldn't,
I wouldn't have any other maps on the warrant. I would have them on the side table or, in the
Or
presentation,
information.
information.
Identify how they associate with that specific article.
Yeah, have a presentation by Joe or you or both at the beginning. And, the town's been talking about this for a while now.
I think that a presentation is important because I think that for a lot of people, they don't think graphically about what the resource protection might look like already and what it could look like. So it just helps them get a frame of reference. So I think a presentation would be important. The only other suggestion I might have with maps is if the new resource protection map is going to just be these features and resource protections applied equally, regardless of what the input criteria is, it might be useful to just have the new one all
One
one
color.
color, just like the gray is all. one
Which I
color.
did originally,
Yeah.
and everybody said.
Well, and I think that this is much better for the
Yeah.
For discussion, this is
educational.
Yep.
good.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good point too.
I'm good with having it all.
that's all
one
people are
color.
gonna care about. All people are gonna
Yeah,
care
sure.
about is what you've done to my property.
Not why.
Well, I think one other issue that came up in the meeting last week.
Would you
Sorry,
introduce yourself?
I'm Mike Friendly, Run Around Pond Road. One of the issues that came up last week was that people saw us, proposing to remove a lot of properties from resource protection and then not put a significant amount of property back in. And there was a lot of reticence because they thought we're removing all this land from resource protection. So I think one of my concerns is if you pull this beginning with habitat out and separate it, that people are going to be like, well, you're not following science. You're not following the recommendations of the comprehensive plan. And because of that, I think there's going to be a contingent of the population that's going to be upset.
I hear what you're saying. I think, and I'm not saying we don't, I think what we need to decide tonight as a planning board or before February something is, what do we want to show as this is our recommendation for the resource protection map.
So
My vote, I'm just going to say this, my vote is that we go with the full thing, including beginning with habitat. We base this on science and data and on our experts locally and elsewhere, based on the comprehensive plan. If this is voted down, then per the comp plan, there's other options that we can go for.
So
But
makes
that's my.
Make it a motion.
I
will,
still have
but-
questions.
Yeah, I'll let Ann.
We've been talking about which stupid map, what to show on the map. I have substantive questions. How did we come up with the yellow areas?
are you talking about the inland wading bird and waterfowl habitat? Yeah, so
Well, that's
here.
yeah,
The
no,
bright
not the
yellow?
orange, the yellow, the
It's yellow?
100-foot stream.
Oh, that's the buffer.
Yes, that's.
Oh,
100.
those are orange.
Those are buffer and streams.
Good lord. So like if we go back to our turtle friends, that area where our turtle friends live.
Down where Mike lives.
So right now, actually, George, do you mind taking that layer off?
Which one?
The beginning with habitat, the 6+. Yeah. Okay. So assume this is the map we go with. Right now, our turtle friends, who I assume are in that little stream, have a buffer of 100 feet, couple
100
hundred feet.
100 feet.
100 feet. Yeah. On
If
The
we
yellow-
go with this, they have almost zero buffer, right?
yeah.
That
So
little H area.
yeah. So right with that turned on right there, the only protection for that stream is the 100-foot riparian buffer or stream side buffer.
And it depends which stream you're
So
talking
like
about.
if you go down to the bottom where you keep going. Yep, that one. So like up top, it's got that must be more than 100 feet. That's probably like a 300-foot buffer,
Mhm.
right?
Up here, this is Runaround Pond, which gets 250.
Nope. Down.
Down here,
Yep. Well, up.
Right.
Right. So between the stream and the edge of it,
this is all floodplain, I think.
Chandler Brook.
Chandler, sure.
Yep.
So right now our turtle friends have like a 250, 300-foot.
Oh, you're referring to the gray zone
Is
that
it gray?
exists
Can we-
currently.
Right.
Maybe
So
it's better
the
to
gray,
show-
you
the
want me to
gray
sh-
is current.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
That's
So even though
always-
we're not trying to protect our turtle friends here,
we were.
we were.
Yeah.
Through floodplain probably.
Yeah,
Right.
and wetland complexes. Yeah.
So the floodplain goes away. If we don't add back in this 6+, our endangered turtle friends have a 100-foot buffer and they're losing at least 250-ish feet of protection habitat and then way more to the south of that.
Can I just
Right.
I want to clarify that on that note is that if I believe this is accurate, that if you take away this, the final result, I believe, keeps in anything 6+ that's currently within resource protection. Let's just see if that bears out. Okay, so that's with the current zoning, and just see if this area right in here, which is in the 6+, stays in there when it takes. Oops. Okay, so that's the existing, and if we, yeah, so if you keep in the beginning with habitat, and actually what I did was I clipped, let's just see if I can turn that on in a red color, which will show up hopefully a lot better. So I'm going to turn off all of that. Okay, so this is clipped to the existing resource protection. And so you see, beginning with habitat 6, beginning with habitat 6+ stays within those areas.
I don't know what you mean. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
let's
So
see.
that is the scenario if
Outside, I'm sorry, that's outside existing 6+.
the current or last year's proposed viewpoint was to take anything that is outside is
Outside the existing?
outside the existing resource, take out anything that would not meet any of the new criteria that is currently resource protected.
Yep.
So the second phase of that would have been to then add things
Step
in.
Yep.
So in this example, if the first phase went through last year,
I just wanted
it
to go.
would have removed a lot of that gray area, but where that 6+ co-occurrence overlaps with the gray area, that small section would have stayed in. So there would have been some protection, but not the full recommended protection from like inland fisheries and wildlife.
It does go away. So that, the beginning with habitat, if you take that off, those protections that you are pointing to, Ann, would go away.
Right. So our turtle friend who lives outside of that yellow line no longer has protection.
Or the green line.
Way more diminished because we are decreasing
Yes.
it even
Yep.
more.
Got it.
Right.
And the ecology of the turtles that it travels a great distance from the stream, so that's why the area is so large.
So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and
And
make a
that's-
motion.
And that's a good
Well,
Well,
swampy area.
I still have some discussion too.
Oh, okay.
But we can do it after the
No, do you
motion.
guys want to keep talking? Because if you guys want to keep talking and not vote on this till next month, that's cool too.
Well, that is an option. I guess what I would like to see at some point in time is we've talked about two different articles. So I'd like to see the final map for an article of either everything, including all the ads plus planning, all the ads minus planning, whatever we come up with. If that fails, then the one that is just removing the stuff that should not be there because there's no reason for it to be there. Those are the two maps.
That's part 1B, which I can give you if you want to see that.
Is the stuff that gets removed.
Yep.
I don't
If part 1A fails.
Yes, I mean, I don't need to see it.
So,
I've got that.
so
if you wanna
can
see.
I, as we're talking about 1A and 1B, right, there's a possibility of a 1C, which is put stuff in and don't take stuff out, which to your point, some people are concerned about taking all this stuff out. Is that something we need to put or talk about putting on the warrant? So option A is put stuff in and take stuff out, to be determined whether our turtle friends stay protected or not. Option B is just take stuff out and don't put anything new in. And option C is just put stuff new in and don't take old stuff out.
That's where we ran with all the confusion last year.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
people, that's why they voted it down.
So the Conservation Commission is not advocating for option C, which would be to add all of this green on top of the gray. What we would advocate for is the most, no pun intended here, most streamlined process to just adopt the existing 2018 comprehensive plan goals, which would just be to say the gray is the old map, this green with a little bit of yellow is the new map.
Plus the
It'll be all
BWH,
green.
right?
It'll be all green.
The green is the new map because these are the scientifically supported things to be protected. That's the option that some people had said at the town meeting last year, had said at our hearing, and the option that we feel is most reflective of the available data. Now, I know with the select board's desire to kind of do a two-phased approach, they were saying to remove things that essentially aren't overlapped by gray or green, and then vote later to add things that are only overlapped by green.
That initially
I think.
was the feeling from the select board, but after the public hearing, I
Yep.
think that, and Kevin is the driving force behind making that decision with the
Yeah.
select board. After we had that public hearing, I felt that he was more under the impression that we need to do this in one full swoop.
Yeah, and I think that my impression from Kevin at that meeting, and a brief discussion I had with him as we were heading out the door, is the same thing, that this should all be considered in one vote to just say rectify the map. But I think he was introducing the caveat that if that vote failed, to also then include a vote that says, well, remove resource protection from any place that is not overlapped by green and gray. That was his saying, was just but conditionally, if the first vote went through, you wouldn't have the second vote.
Which is what George started the
Yeah.
meeting with today.
Which is what they voted on last year and voted down.
No,
What-
last year we just were gonna vote to remove stuff from resource protection and not add anything.
Yeah, so,
Which is what option B is this year.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think
So last year, the plan was to do that option, as you know, with the saying, we'll do the other stuff next year. And it seemed like the feedback was, we don't want to do this separately. We want to do this at once. So now it seems like the proposed language might be do it all at once or go back to last year's option A if
Have a redo.
everything, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Article
Yeah.
4 would be everything added and everything taken out that shouldn't be there.
Mhm.
If that fails, then somebody gets up and says, okay, we tried, but we're still being unfair to people who are in resource protection that shouldn't be. And Article 5 would remove those people. And Article 5, if 4 passes, Article 5.
It's actually 1A and 1B.
Yeah, 1A and 1B.
1A and 1B.
And I think also, like, if 1B passes, 1A fails, 1B passes, I think there's more work to be done.
Yes.
Yes.
Following this.
Yes.
Yeah, because that is where an informational meeting could come up and they could say, well, I voted against 1A because of X, Y, and Z. I didn't understand this, which is a failure on our part to not educate, or I just don't agree with this. So those are the conversations that I think we had a little bit of at our last meeting, and I think that there is an opportunity to have those again at the public hearing that the planning board will be hosting prior to the April meeting. So I think there's still opportunity to answer some of those questions, which I think it's great that we've had these conversations so early. But I think that with enough education outreach, we can probably get to a frame point or a standpoint where we could do it all at once because people will understand, or at least they will fully understand the implications and the reasoning before voting. Whereas, like, when you get to the town meeting, if there's confusion, the default position is just keep it as it is, so.
So have we not gotten the public's input on this yet?
No, so
This one.
the
This
Well,
came- this
Conser-
came
yeah,
after.
the Conservation Commission, at the request of the planning board, held kind of like a first informal just outreach and education type thing, because last year it was determined that a lot of people were thinking about both phases, even though we were only voting on one phase. There's some confusion because people are saying, well, I don't want to vote on phase one until I know what phase two looks like, which is understandable. So it ended up turning into a discussion that wasn't really even being voted on. So that's why this year we started with this informational meeting. George sent out the letters to every impacted landowner, whether their land is being increased or decreased. And we met with them, the people who showed up, just to discuss this. And that is just a bonus meeting because the town requires that then the planning board has another meeting before the warrant language is put on the ballot to say, here's what the warrant language is. Here's what the warrant language is going to mean. So there is another opportunity. And as a Conservation Commission, we're more than willing to help with that meeting as well to answer
So-
technical
so that's
questions.
kind of a good question. I mean, the thought here is we're going to vote on this before we fully bring this to the town, right, for another informational meeting.
Well, an informational
I mean,
meeting,
Right, we would just share what we voted on.
because
right,
the public,
next.
the problem now is that we have to finalize a warrant, and then that goes to the public hearing.
Mhm.
So the warrant is published before the
Right,
official
okay.
public
So
hearing.
then that's normal anyways.
Yeah.
So you'd have to have a separate informational meeting to go
And-
over other
Yeah,
changes.
and my understanding is that the objective here is for you as the planning board to make a recommendation to the select board. The select board ultimately writes the warrant language, but to make the recommendation, and then the next meeting will explain what that warrant language, whatever they decide the warrant language is, what that's going to be. So,
So we don't have public input on whether the 6+ resources should be in or out. And we
Well-
don't have public input
Well,
on
well,
whether
we-
we should have the 2 warrant articles.
I think we do have
We-
public input on the resources because it was adopted in the comp plan already. So while it is new language to what it would be new language in a resource protection, it was adopted by the comp plan. And then we did have a discussion about all of this. So like at any given point, someone could say, I don't care about inland wading bird or waterfowl habitat. I want to discuss that more and have it pulled out. Or I don't care about, 10-acre wetlands. I want to discuss that. But I feel that we have provided opportunity to discuss everything that's proposed.
Can I clarify for Ann that the beginning with Habitat 6+ was presented on December 6th at the public informational meeting? So just so you
It was or was
It
not?
was,
Yeah.
it was. What has happened since then, and part of the purpose of an informational meeting is to take public input and consider making changes. The input that was taken at the meeting, follow up into information to exchange with individual landowners, input from the select board chairman who participated, indicated to a consideration of pulling the beginning with Habitat 6+ out because that was the one that drew the most attention and concern. So even though the option of pulling it out has not been presented at an informational meeting, the purpose of having that last one led to this situation.
Yeah, I would say that, George, everybody has taken what the December 6th discussions and come up with possible solutions, something to.
Yeah.
So I think the public has I'm comfortable the public has had input to it.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what we would gain by having another informational meeting. I do, if we're not comfortable, as we close in on stuff, if we're not comfortable making a decision on with or without blanding turtles, or however we want to do it tonight, and I've never seen a blanding turtle, so I don't hate
They're
them.
very cryptic.
Maybe yellow neck.
They're very
I'll
cryptic.
keep my eyes open. We can make a final decision on the resource, on these two articles next meeting. But we do have Deer Creek, we just have to use our time better.
I don't know what more discussion would have to make that decision. I don't know why we can't make it tonight.
That's the question. Are we comfortable?
I am.
Okay. Any other discussion?
No, I have enough information. I'm just going to say the reason this was such a shit show last year is because the public didn't feel that they had been heard enough.
Mhm.
And because the perception was that a selectman or selectmen forced it through in a particular way.
Mhm.
And if that is the perception again this year, this will not go well, and we will have shit show version number 2, which I would love not.
Yeah, I think we're all trying. I think we're all trying to
So
avoid
that
that.
is my concern at this
It's
point.
a great
So-
concern. And actually, Joe, am I wrong here where I think we're in a much better position right now than we were last year?
Yeah.
I feel like
So I
the
think
last meeting, it's almost like flipped, right?
Yeah.
Now the first vote is for everything that the comp.
yeah, because I know last year I was at I ate 2 boxes of Girl Scout cookies sitting at the meeting.
You were the problem.
Yeah, I bought 6 boxes and then I went back for more. But I know last year that there was a lot of people stood up and said, we don't want to consider this separately. We want to consider it all at the same time. And then it seemed like earlier this year, the conversation, or earlier in 2022, the conversation was, well, we'll just consider both warrant language, 2 votes, same meeting. And it seems like since more and more public input has come in, we've now gotten to the point where it's like, oh, maybe we should just consider doing this all in one fell swoop. So I think that we are here because of the public input,
Agreed.
which I think puts us in a much stronger position to have a smoother meeting at the next town meeting. Regardless of how the vote goes, I think there's more people who are in a position to feel like they're making a decision based off of information. So
We
that's
do
at
have a
least my
public hearing.
standpoint.
I
Yeah.
mean, there is still a public hearing where people will get
Yeah.
to hear why whatever solution we come
Which
up
and that one has to happen per the rules of the town, so that's happening. Whatever.
State.
Yeah. Sorry, for state law. You're correct. Sorry. So I think that this was just a nice bonus one to help us get some more public information. So
Yeah, I'm ready to make a decision tonight if others are.
And-
My motion still stands.
What was it?
Oh, I didn't make a motion. Sorry, I said I was ready.
You said I move.
To get you to move on.
My motion is to propose to the select board the zoning map amendments part 1A, in which we include, beginning with Habitat 6 plus multiple resources based on data, the best science, the experts, and our comp plan.
Second.
Any further discussion?
And just to clarify, that is the version that was in the public posting of this meeting agenda.
Yep.
The supplemental one I produced after that. So that's what has been advertised for tonight's meeting.
And I'd be more comfortable actually seeing that so that I know what's, it's just seeing, this is the final thing that's going to go in with the article. And if not tonight, it's at some point
Do
in
you want to
time.
hold off then?
No, I mean, I think everybody knows
It's in your packet.
what we're talking
You
about.
have the specific page on that, George.
In the packet?
Yeah.
Yep.
If it's there, I'm good. I mean, I want to make sure that's what, we've got another opportunity to discuss process and public hearing.
It is page,
This one here.
1A, which is, starts on page
51 of your
Shows all
packet.
that stuff.
Oh, sorry, no, this is the right one.
You mean the one without the current?
Yes, the one without that,
That
He's talking
I
about the
haven't-
one without the gray.
Yeah, nobody's seen that yet.
Yeah,
That was not in our packet.
the one without the gray.
No. I haven't produced that.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it. I'm good with that.
Yeah,
Um,
it's just, here it is. Bing.
Yeah,
There it is.
and Midas, that has blending turtle on it or not?
Yes.
This is the blending.
Okay, so that's what we're talking about.
That map
Yeah, I'm sorry.
reflects Juliet's motion. So
I mean, I will say that I'm not in favor of the blanding turtle. Again, nothing personal. I think we're adding new requirements. I think in all of this, and I know you've all worked very hard with landowners, we're gonna put some requirements on people and we don't have an escape hatch for them. So all those areas that are now in turtle color, they are, those people are now gonna have what can they, what we're gonna say is you can't do anything.
Well, it's not anything.
And actually, I want to take away, it's not just turtle.
Yeah.
No, I think-
A
Yeah.
lot,
Yeah,
a lot
you're right.
more, but
6 occurrence.
there is a lot of it that.
I have to keep it simple.
No,
So just the
no,
turtle.
no, you're right.
And-
but
That's the
it's-
primary.
Yeah,
driver.
and like,
But I guess the point is, I'm not sure what you can do. I mean, that's in the whole concept about expanding resource protection is we do limit people's ability to do stuff on
Yeah.
their property.
functionally, it limits construction and extractive industries. So agriculture is still allowed,
I got you,
forestry
but I
is still
mean,
allowed.
if somebody is,
Yeah.
I mean, I've had people when I was talking about affordable housing and other things come up and say, that's what I'm leaving my kids, is I want to be able, I am land rich and not much else. And so I just want to say that that is an impact that if this passes and that, the town will vote on it, that is a concern I have on expanding the resource protection area.
I mean, I'll be honest, I'm not super concerned because I'm not super interested in having subdivisions that close to a natural resource because that's what it'll be. Right? Like that's what it's limiting. Those can still be used for agriculture.
Mhm.
That's Davis Road. So a bunch of that is agriculture already,
And
or hay
forestry.
fields at least,
Mhm.
or forestry. So I'm not super interested in seeing subdivisions in those locations anyway.
Yeah, nor am I. But I mean, the point is there's someone, we are taking away that right, good, right or otherwise, to do that. And quite truthfully, we've taken the right to put your kid's house on there.
Yeah, but we've also restored that right to a lot of other landowners if this is
I
added in
understand,
as well.
and I think
so.
we should if it doesn't. I'm all in favor of taking out what's not supposed to be there.
Yeah.
So I'm giving you my opinion, which is we're going to take the right away for people to sell off, backlot, whatever to their family. So, but it's been motion and somebody's going to call the vote, so I'll quit talking. And I will, if all in favor of the motion before us, raise a hand. And it will be 3-1, all those opposed.
I will say, and this is separate, that map is terrifying. We are on our way to being Freeport,
Hmm.
right? I mean, rural is West Durham, and that's about it.
I think what you're observing is if you take away, and just so you know, since 2022, I have added 1,000 lots to this map since 2022. The last time the parcel map on the GIS was updated was 2002, part of that comprehensive plan. And so last year, as I was developing the GIS system, I added 1,000 lots.
Yeah, and I guess I would say that resource protection, some of the affordable housing stuff we'll hopefully get to short. I'm not sure that's the best way. There are other ways to slow down,
No,
stop.
I'm not. I'm not talking
I
about
know you-
resource protection being the way to do it. We've talked about resource protection being based on science, but we've been talking about this in the rural character of Durham for a very long time and how to do it. And we're doing a really terrible job. And we're going to be just another suburb.
Yeah, it's something we just need to take a look at. You can't have a big zoning RA or whatever it may be, and then say, as long as you follow these steps, have at it. I mean, then you get into the whole other different zoning districts and I'm preaching to the choir. So, okay, I'm sorry. So I think we have our solution. I will take this to the selectmen on Tuesday, barring some other disease that
And
I
I'm
may
assuming
get.
you're still going to support going with 1B, which is if this fails, you pull out the properties that have no comprehensive plan data supporting the resource protection.
Can we say that again? I'm sorry.
So if this fails at
Yep.
the town meeting, the select board wants to have the alternative of what was put before the voters last year, which was to amend the zoning map, resource protection boundary, to pull out areas that had been based on floodplain that are not floodplain. So I'm assuming you're still going forward. You want to take a position on that?
Well, I wonder, so Conservation Commission, would you,
I mean, you're thinking about that. I would be in favor of that because I think we do owe it to the people who are, not supposed to be in resource protection. I think, and you, Juliet, you said it very well, which is, okay, folks, Article 1A failed, but we still owe it to the people who shouldn't be there to do that. And if we're holding, in my opinion, holding them hostage for another year or so, that's unfair.
Is that
To those
is that
folks.
a motion?
Now, I will make that as a motion.
I'll second that. Now we can
Any
discuss.
other discussion? Seeing none, all those who are in favor
Oh,
of
wait.
blind vote?
This is option. this
Yeah,
is
1B.
option B. If we
Yeah.
don't
Fallback
get
option.
I mean, what other options do we have?
That's would be.
Not
a-
all
No,
of it,
you
right?
don't want to have
I
X,
mean-
Y, and Z. You don't want to
Yeah,
have any more than
I
this.
agree.
But we know select board's gonna do it. I guess we could just say that,
I think they are because
no, they will, yeah, they
Yeah.
will. That's what I'm saying. So.
And I think it's fair, and I think I'm in favor to support it, but we have a motion and a second, I believe. I second it. So Alan made the motion, I seconded. All those in favor, raise a hand. 3, all those opposed? All those wishing to abstain?
Can I do that?
Yes, you
Very-
can.
You may do
very
that.
torn. Yeah, I'm
You
very torn.
You may do that.
Yeah.
So it passes.
Just watch TV, you'll know what you
Is
can
I
do.
would say if this failed, I would want more time. I know everyone is pushing to get those people out of resource protection that should, but I would ask for more time. That's my.
Yeah, problem is James, in the town meeting thing, which I'm getting used to, is 12 months.
Hmm.
I mean, I think it may be time, we did 12 months now. Anyway, it has passed, and so thank you both for your
For the
participation.
record is 3-1, right?
301, yeah, she's an abstention. I believe.
Abstain.
You're
Yeah, well,
welcome.
just thank you all for the opportunity to be a part of this. I think it's helped us get to a much more cohesive place today than we were at this time for the last
Well,
time.
you will need to make your case on the 1st or 8th of April, whatever it is. But we do need to move on to the other one, affordable housing. And yes, thank you very much, which we've beaten considerably. So I think what we discussed while George is handing stuff out, what we discussed was a similar thing, and hopefully it's not confusing it, but at our last meeting, we talked about, and Ann, I don't know how familiar you are with the survey, but option 1 was to pretty much follow the comp plan. And if you need time to look at that, so that was going to be our recommendation with yet another fallback, which is to, if 1 fails, what number is this going to be, George? 2A fails, which is the, similar to the comp plan, then we would go with 2B, which is pretty much just using the state language as our ordinance, which would hopefully make the code enforcement jobs easier.
So I have a question on
Sure.
that. So I read through George's really helpful summary. And so the 3 options were less restrictive than zoning, more restrictive than zoning, and then neutral and simply adopt state requirements. And at least George's notes say the planning board decided to move forward with options 1 and 2, not the neutral adopt the state requirements.
No, neutral is this 2 is the neutral adopt the state requirement.
Not according to the notes. So that's what I'm going off of.
Did I misstate?
Are you reading the talking points?
I'm reading your
The agenda
other
notes for
business
tonight?
agenda notes for tonight.
Yeah. It's just the way it's,
Discussed and looked at in terms of it's easier for people to understand more restrictive, less restrictive, and then be neutral. That doesn't necessarily mean that the order should be in any particular order. I was just trying to explain it for the purposes of the planning board's understanding and what the survey did. Do you put the states last because it's neutral, or do you put it in the middle, or do you put it first in the survey? So it's just a matter of which order are we discussing it, not which order was being proposed.
so at the last meeting, the planning board members who were present did vote to propose to the select board choosing the comprehensive plan recommendations as the first warrant article, following the pattern of the Resource Protection District. And then as a fallback, because the state must comply with the new state law on affordable housing, having the fallback be to just simply put in the state language.
I don't need to revisit that vote because I wasn't here, but my understanding is that the survey was 50-50
Mhm.
on being more restrictive versus the other 50% was split between being less restrictive and neutral. So we're basically saying we don't care what the survey said.
Well, I think neutral is less restrictive. I mean, because the state, 3 up there is restrict, you have to increase lot size, do other things. One is less restrictive, but 2, the neutral one is the states, which in fact it allows additional housing. So there's still more housing being, what's the right term, allowed. So I never really saw it as neutral. It was neutral in the sense that it would basically follow the state law, but you're still going to have more housing. That's how I looked at it.
Maybe I misunderstood the survey results.
And actually, on that note, have we received any additional survey?
And I think you did, you were accurate in terms of the results, but the discussion last time by the planning board was that there were a total of 200 people doing the survey. 100 people said be more restrictive. 100 people said either be neutral or less restrictive. And so the discussion of the planning board members came out to say that wasn't a strong enough indication to
We
go.
have like
to
100
go-
people attend town meeting. Okay, I don't need to. I wasn't
No,
here.
but I
I
think,
don't need to revisit it.
I just want to clarify from my mind that the neutral option increases housing opportunities. It's not, it doesn't
We
make
had
it,
like 25% vote for
I
that.
believe it was about 25. 1 and 2 up there, which in my mind expanded housing, made it easier to do housing from what we're doing now. 3 was you got to have bigger lots,
Yeah.
which you can still have more housing.
About
which makes it
50%.
harder. 50% said that. The other, in my mind, the other 50% combined said, let's increase housing. And I think what swayed me is that 1 up there was closer to the comp plan.
Yeah, that's right.
That's mine too.
I
That's
think
one of the big complaints are when we create anything in an ordinance, it should be supporting the comp plan. If it doesn't, then we're going against the comp plan.
And these are the comprehensive plan recommendations up on the screen.
Well, and I think we can do it again, but I think we made that decision last time. But
Right.
that was my thinking is that 50% in one version or another said, let's add housing. And half of those, was follow the comp plan,
Have we gotten any more survey results?
10 or
Anything
something.
that changes? Any?
Not really.
No.
They're about the same split. I mean, I had them before I didn't go to the meeting last week, but
So there's no reason to revisit this.
Other than
sorry.
looking at the specific language, that's because last time you didn't have the specific language.
Right.
This is the specific language. So to do 2A, you would,
In section 4.1.A.2, you would eliminate the only one single-family detached dwelling or two-family dwelling shall be permitted on a lot. And then under subsection 7, which currently says minimum lot size, two-family dwelling, 110,000 square feet, which was also a recommendation of the comprehensive plan, to say you shouldn't have to have 2.5 acres versus 2 acres for a duplex. And then you'd use the language maximum number of dwelling units per lot, and then you would have 3 units total, which could either be a configuration of 1 single family with 2 accessory apartments or 1 two-family dwelling with 1 accessory apartment. And this would be subject to subdivision regulations. So if anybody created these 3 units in a single 5-year period, that would require a planning board approval of a subdivision, as I understand it. And then with that, just the next page is that since the state law says you cannot limit it to a single unit, then I did change the wording up there from single family to rural character of the community. And then you would have to eliminate that restriction that you can only have 1 accessory apartment per lot. So this would be full implementation of the comprehensive plan recommendations, in my view.
Yeah, so 2 things. I really like what you added in bold at the bottom, George.
Yep.
And just if this is what's going on the article, part 2A, there's a typo under affordable housing law response.
Only one?
Well, just that I saw.
Because I'm finding them every day. Which one was it?
Just see at the very top, the title, Part 2A, Affordable Housing Law Response.
Oh, yes. I think I might have already corrected that,
Okay.
but thank you for making sure. Response.
So that's 2A. Do you want to look at 2B before you?
We can, I mean,
So the idea is 2A goes in front if this fails,
Yep.
2B.
2B is, and then 2B, the argument for 2B is this is what the state said we had to do, and
Yeah.
if
So let
we
me
turn
just
it down,
pass-
then he's gonna follow the state law. So no action is not necessarily, it's not gonna stop this process.
Right, we have to do.
We have to do something.
Except doesn't our ordinance already require additional space for additional?
For a duplex, you need 2.5 acres. For a single family, you only need 2 acres. That's the only
Does
space.
this change that?
2A would change it to say you only need 2 acres for a minimum lot size with however many units you put on there.
If they fit.
2B simply leaves that in there. So now if everybody have 2B?
Yes.
Okay,
The
so
code, the
this
code
would,
enforcement officer would like to justify his overtime, so he's about to say something.
I'm
I'm only kidding there, by the way.
on my own.
I appreciate his being here.
So I did reach out to get clarification on some things to MMA. Basically, they said, we can't clarify for you. So there's that. I did speak with Dan Averill, who is one of the directors from DECD, and they said that guidance will be coming. They expect rulemaking to be finalized shortly and public comment to open within the next month or two. And they're the people that are going to be making rulemaking to clarify some of the questions I had about LD2.
Yeah, I understand. I think
2003.
we've beat that horse, and I think the answer is we have a town meeting in early April, and the assumption is that what we propose doing is not going to be overruled unless they really pull something out of their butts.
No. And some people have asked for a delay of the action time, not January 1st, but later than that.
July.
July
I'm
1st.
sorry, yeah, that's what I meant, July 1st. They've asked to make that, give another year, but who knows where that'll go.
Well, if they make significant changes, and I have asked to get my Corvette back, and it still never showed up.
So on option B, this is,
Yeah, so actually,
But
can I
thank you.
just
I'm not-
comment on that really quick? I think that's because when we had that hearing or meeting, there was some concerns on that, right? Like what if, we're not reading this, what if they make changes? Maybe, we'll keep our eye out, but like you said, if there's anything big.
yeah, the law basically requires 3 units on any property where you allow a single family. If there's an existing dwelling there, you have to allow up to 3 units. And if it's a vacant lot, you have to allow 2 units. And that's currently what Durham has. You can have a duplex on a lot. It allows you to increase lot sizes as long as whatever increase you do is not more than the base. So that's the law, and that's pretty much what all the wording that's there. There was some clarification on accessory apartments, but Durham is pretty much in compliance right now on accessory apartments. So all I've done on this version is just simply put in the language right from the law. Again, eliminating the only one single family per lot. And down below, maximum number of dwelling units. The law says lots with an existing dwelling. And I put in the effective date of the town meeting, April 1st, 2023, 2 additional dwelling units for a maximum of 3, subject to subdivision, and vacant lots, maximum of 2 dwellings. That's pretty much all the law says.
Do we want to change that to July? Or we're saying?
Well, it would be effective as of the town meeting.
Right. I don't think 3 months. I mean, I think we can tell the state we heard you. And I think, again, I don't like the way they did it, but at least their goal was honorable or, to try
And
and.
this would
Big
keep the
housing.
2.5 acres for a duplex. Just leaves that alone. And again, over on accessory apartments, it eliminates the limitation because that wouldn't be allowed under the law. If somebody had an existing home, they could have up to 3 units.
So really the only difference is the vacant lot piece, right? between the
Yeah,
two?
the limitation, this treats all Durham landowners the same. The state law says if you've got an existing house, you get more units than somebody with a piece of vacant land. For whatever reason, the legislature
reason.
did that. Yep.
So I think we've had votes on those, unless we want to change the votes or open to more comment. I mean, it would help to sell it if somebody sees a reason between now and April 1st, tweak stuff for the public hearing, but we'll get another shot. And I think we had a very good public hearing back in October on this thing, so. If not, we'll move on to private ways, which at the end of the day may be the most controversial of all of them. And all we want to do on this one is tweak some language, correct, George?
Yeah, you may recall that we've been up to bat. How many strikes do you get in this game, man?
Oh man, backlots.
Yeah, roads are,
A lot.
hey, roads
Roads
are,
and backlots.
they're controversial no matter where you go. Alan, do you want one of these? Okay. So basically, we talked about changing backlots earlier this year. We looked
Do you
at,
have an extra one?
yep.
Thank you.
We looked at the issue of this new state law, kind of blew us out of the water for this single backlot provision. So we've kind of just, all I'm doing here is just clarifying the state law, which says you can't really limit it to a single family dwelling under the new law. And I explain that down below. And then we also include within this the consolidation of the rules for what most towns call private ways, which are private roads outside of legal subdivisions. Under Maine law, you can claim exemptions and do up to, 3 lots in any 5-year period. And then you have exemptions for gift lots to relatives and other exemptions. So you see a private road serving 3 or 4 lots. And over time, it becomes more without a subdivision approval. That's currently in the ordinance, but right now, some of the provisions are in the backlots section, some are in roads, some are in the appendix for the subdivision for streets, and it's not all reconciled. And the other problem with it right now is any landowner that wants to do this, they have to go to the code officer and the road commissioner to get approval of the plan. And then they go to the planning board to get approval of the maintenance agreement. So it's just like a nightmare of trying to understand who approves what. And for the average landowner, it is a nightmare to try to go through this process. So what I did was I took standard private way language from other towns, put it into this format. And earlier, I think it was back in June, the planning board said if all we're going to do is, if we're not going to be able to do a subdivision review, we don't want to review these at all. And so you suggested that this be delegated to the road commissioner and the code officer, that they would review these private ways and the planning board would not be involved. So that's what's on here. And the only additional thing is at the town meeting last year, there was confusion over, you're striking out language that says it has to go to a town meeting for a vote to accept a road. The council chairman, or the select board chairman requested that we specifically put language in there. And so you see, in section 5.23, 2 statements. A says, any acceptance of any private road as a town road requires a vote of approval at town meeting. And then down under, it's the second time in here somewhere, there has to be a note on the plan. C1 says at the end of that they have to have a private maintenance agreement. And then the same statement that acceptance of the road. So it's really crystal clear, you cannot get a town road accepted without going to town meeting.
Is there a definition of private way?
I think there is.
No. You think we should add one?
Yep. Otherwise, I don't think it's clear whether this applies to subdivision roads or not.
The introductory language, do you think that helps or is it inadequate?
I mean, that's just a note. That's not part of the wouldn't
No,
in
no, I
interpreting
was-
it wouldn't be considered part of the ordinance.
No, I was referring more to B, 1, 2, 3. See, it does say private road, which was the original heading.
I don't think right because we have subdivision roads that are private roads.
Yeah.
So when do we use this versus something else? And one of the other reasons that the road ordinance was a disaster last year was because some subdivision developers were very concerned about how this would apply to future expansions.
So this leaves the current policies in place. This is only intended to deal with the administrative procedures.
Well, we said that last year, but nobody believed us.
No, actually, last time there was a discussion of a change, and the big debate was over whether these roads had to be paved or not.
Is one of them. I mean, I think putting it in there needs to be clear because as I read it, and I think it's correct, it could be, it just talks about a way developed to provide access to 2 or more dwelling units. And we don't need somebody coming in here and saying, I've got a 5-lot subdivision, why, and it's gonna be a private road. Why do I have to do that? But, and then, so if we put it,
Well, Ann, let me ask you, since you did such a bang-up job with backlot clarification last year, would you be willing to take on trying to clarify that issue?
I gotta see if I even have that work still. Let me look.
No, you added a lot of change language. We wouldn't go back to try to do anything on backlots. What I'm suggesting is in the same way that you clarified what it meant for backlot access, would you be willing to take a look at private road versus private way?
I went to an associate position. I'll look at it.
Yeah, if you could
So
offer any
it's-
suggestions, that'd be
yeah.
really helpful.
I'm gonna look at the bigger ordinance
Yeah.
piece.
It's confusing. As you know, roads are just a very confusing issue.
So can I just ask, I don't have my full ordinance in front of me and that's my fault, but the goal of this is you're not doing a subdivision.
Right?
You may be doing a backlot or you may be doing a family subdivision
Correct.
or something else that doesn't
Family
require you-
development.
that doesn't require you to go through subdivision approval.
Yep.
You play by these rules.
Correct.
If you are extending a subdivision road, for example,
That would have to go to the subdivision because if it's an approved subdivision, the amendment has to be approved as a subdivision amendment.
okay.
This language in here about extending a road would be a road that never went through subdivision approval.
And this only applies if you're accessing 2 or more,
Correct.
well, not dwelling units, have to be 2 or more lots, right? 'Cause now
Well,
you
that's
can
where we
have
got it.
3 dwelling units on a friggin' single lot or on a back lot.
that's how we got into the whole discussion was that if you have a back lot, you can now have 3 dwelling units on the back lot.
So it should be 2 or more lots rather than dwelling units.
Well, look,
I mean, would you allow a driveway
Dwelling.
into a,
Dwelling, it has to be dwelling. Because it doesn't even have to have a road in the lot. It doesn't have to have it if there's no house, no road.
2 or
frontage.
more developed lots? So if you had a back lot that had single lot, 3 dwelling, like main and 2 accessories or something like that, what are you allowing them to put in there?
I'm gonna say your road has to meet road standards through the road commissioner prior to me issuing a building permit.
So these road standards are like driveway standards.
Yep.
If it's,
That-
if it's,
Yeah,
Yep.
right?
I'm gonna look at Calvin and say, Calvin, is that road okay for that? Is that a road okay?
but don't we,
From you?
okay, so let
he
me try to
needs-
clarify. If you have a lot and you're going to be putting in a single family and you're going to be adding an accessory apartment, you just have your driveway. If you're going to be putting in a duplex on that lot that has current road frontage, then it's still just a driveway. If you want to create a back lot that has one house on it, with or without accessory, and you don't have the legal frontage, 300 feet, then you have to create a backlot access.
And that's what's confusing about this language right now, because then it says, and if you create 2 or more lots, I think it's lots, dwelling units for that part, then you have to get a private road have it upgraded to what's in most towns known as a private way, with a plan approved by the road commissioner and the code officer, and a maintenance agreement by the planning board.
So I guess I still don't understand what we want to accomplish. So if you have road frontage, no matter how many units you have on that, you've got a driveway. Got it. That's easy. You don't have road frontage, you're on a back lot.
Yep.
No matter how many dwelling units you're building to this standard,
No, that's limited to, under the current language,
it's 2 or more dwelling units or structures. Well,
Right.
actually, 2 or more dwelling units. So we're still basing it off of dwelling units instead of lots. So
Yeah.
if I have a single family home on a back lot, I'm building a driveway.
Yep.
If I have a single family home and an in-law apartment, I'm doing this.
accessory apartments are considered to be accessory, so it does not trigger.
Well, it's a dwelling
It's a
unit.
dwelling unit.
It's a dwelling unit.
I mean, I think
They're
you,
defined as dwelling units.
I'm not sure why you would differentiate between a lot and a dwelling unit. Because if you have 3 people living in a house, or 3 separate living areas, you could have 6 cars, you could have, I mean, you're not talking about 2 more people. So if you start adding accessory units back there, do you not increase the traffic?
If it's a standalone accessory dwelling unit, I would say that's a dwelling unit. There are 2 homes there, and I need that road to be approved by the road commissioner.
Well, what is the definition of a dwelling unit? When we talk about dwelling units and affordable housing, we're talking about apartments above a garage, the whole
Doesn't
9
matter.
yards. It's a dwelling unit to me is, because what's the difference?
Bathroom, sleeping area.
Yeah, that's a dwelling unit.
Right, regardless of whether it's attached or
And
detached.
X number of cars come with that. Traffic, the fire commissioner, the fire chief's got to get back there. And if we run this past the fire chief, was one of my other questions, but see what I'm saying? I'm concerned that, I don't know what the difference is in this case. If there's different people living up there, if I have people living above my barn and living on the 2nd floor of my house, I'm going to add cars, I'm going to add more traffic.
Well,
That
and
which is
I'll-
different to me than a lot.
well, and some of this becomes weird if you're talking about dwelling units instead of dwelling units on different lots. So are you going to have a maintenance agreement with yourself? If it's one lot with 3 dwelling units that are all commonly owned, am I going to have a maintenance agreement with myself to access my single back lot? Because they already think we're nuts with the maintenance agreement requirements.
That's why we dumped it on the road commissioner.
It should be, it should be multiple
Sorry, Calvin.
owners. The intent is that it would cover
So then it
the
needs to be
agreement for
multiple developed lots.
I believe so.
Right?
Unless it was a condominium situation.
If we just
Dwelling
made
units
this,
under separate ownership, but that doesn't help you if you've got different lots under the same ownership and they sell it.
are we biting off more than we can chew? Should we go back to just do what the selectmen asked for, which is just tell them that they have to get the town approval for a, town meeting approval, and not try to take on other changes? I mean, I'm concerned because you could have 2 back lots with 6 families back there and 3, living in the front. Maybe I'm being unrealistic, but you could have multiple different people living. I'm just asking.
It's tough.
We don't want to put something out that's not going to clarify
I
stuff.
always think keep it as simple as possible. You're not, are you really gonna regulate every instance, every situation? No, you're not. So that's, you just raised some situations that could happen.
Well, I could see where somebody builds a house and said, I want to rent the 2nd floor and I want to rent something above the garage. And, I mean, if we believe that people are going to do accessory apartments, why would they not? What's going to keep them from doing it on a back lot?
I would be happy to take a stab, but I don't know what we're trying to accomplish. I don't understand enough what we're trying to accomplish to do that. I mean, because even stuff like, there are other pieces. It has to be brought up to subdivision road standards.
And I'm having trouble with 5.23C. A little bit with the numbering, but it goes from 1 to 5. But we're talking about professional engineer designing, and as Ann said, it's got to be brought up to subdivision. To me, it's not clear what's the trigger that makes that happen.
I think it's more than one dwelling
That's
unit
correct.
right now, which
More-
could be a single family home and an accessory over the garage, attached, detached, whatever. And I'm not sure that's our intent here.
No, it's not the intent. And I'm not sure, I could present a case that an accessory apartment does not trigger the multiple lot, but I'd have to use some different definitions and probably don't want to get into that tonight.
Maybe we're just not there on, we just drop back and punt, say, get it approved by the road commissioner and go to a town meeting to get it accepted as a public road.
All I can say is the language that's drafted to change roads to private ways, most of the other towns, this is what they do with these. And these are the standards that they apply. And it seems to work pretty good.
Well, so then the question is, what are we, dwelling unit versus lot? What are they doing there?
It's for multiple lots, not for multiple dwelling units. Is how it's done. Now, I know the wording in this ordinance is confusing. That's what I'm trying to fix. But it may well be that a partial
take a
fix
shot
is
at this.
worse than no fix at all.
I'm not sure, do we take a shot at this again next month, this particular?
Well, I mean, the other thing is I would rather not change that backlot piece to one single backlot instead of one single family dwelling until we figure out what's happening with the affordable housing piece. Because, right, if it's a single, this was written with the intent that you had one dwelling unit per backlot. And so dwelling unit and lot were synonymous in this standard. And that is probably changing. So,
I think it has, because, we're gonna change, if it gets accepted, it'll change, well, state laws change it, and otherwise, so it has changed.
I mean, and that's the other piece, right? We didn't look at that when drafting the affordable housing, right? So maybe we don't want to increase lot sizes, but we also didn't look at whether they could be on back lots or road frontage or anything like that.
I don't think we can,
So,
correct me if I'm wrong, we can't stop them from doing it on a backlot.
The multiple units?
The affordable, that's a bad term, but the multiple units,
well, that's not how you do it. You don't do it by lot, you do it by frontage. You can change dimensional requirements. And road frontage is a dimensional
no,
requirement.
I got you, but the backlot, if there is a backlot and somebody wants to build on that, is that not a lot that falls under the state law?
Right, but so the exception is you can, for example, and I haven't looked at it specifically, because I don't have to do that anymore, but you can increase dimensional requirements. So one dimensional requirement is you can increase lot size,
Correct.
right? If you're gonna put 3 houses on it, you can require 10 acres. You're gonna put 3 dwelling units on it, you can require 10 acres, right? But another dimensional requirement is road frontage. So if you're gonna have 1 dwelling unit, you have 50 feet of road frontage, which is the frickin' backlot. If you're gonna have 3, you need 350 feet, which is our standard. So by increasing the dimensional standard, which is allowed, you prohibit multiple dwelling units on a backlot.
And can you differentiate between a backlot and a front lot?
Well, you're differentiating between road frontage requirements.
So what you're saying is you would increase the road frontage, right now you have 350 feet on a lot.
I'm saying for a single family home, you have 50 feet of road frontage and meet these requirements.
On a backlot.
for a duplex or multiple units, you have to have 350 feet, not 50 feet with meeting these requirements.
So you change it just for the back lot.
Sure.
I mean, that's.
That's the effect.
Back lot's an exception anyway.
Yes,
Road frontage.
exactly.
You get one home on a back lot now with that exception of 50 feet road frontage. It doesn't mean you get 3.
So we'd have to.
The way the affordable housing amendments are, you do get 3.
Yeah.
So you're
You
sticking
can change
3
that.
dwelling units down a flippin' driveway on a back lot
That's,
with no subdivision approval.
that's my concern. That's why I think it's,
Right.
it, because it's,
Although the new law does say subject to subdivision requirements. So if they
Even
create
if it's a
3
family.
lots,
Yeah, if it's a family subdivision
they
Right.
yeah, have to be exempt.
or even a rental.
but we're probably not in a position.
No,
to-
rental would be
Yeah, that's true.
a subdivision.
Well,
So 6 weeks, 3,
yeah, it's the
so
dwelling units.
the question would be, how do we take that on between now and April 1st?
Well, my concern is if there's this much confusion at this level, going to the town meeting will be a disaster.
Yeah, exactly.
And so maybe it's just punt and let the broken machine continue.
Yeah, I think that's right for this. I'm just gonna leave it out there. I don't love our affordable housing amendments, but the horse is out of the barn.
Yeah, so what I will do, if it's all right with you, is for the next meeting, I will just prepare an amendment that just simply clarifies that town roads can only be accepted by a town meeting.
Why bother?
Because the
It's state
select
law.
board has asked it.
Yes,
Frick's sake,
every
it's
meeting I
state
go
law.
to, so it's
Good lord.
a simple
Whatever.
change, but
I have a question. You asked if it took effect right as soon as the annual meeting voted. Is there a waiting period in Durham for ordinance passage?
No.
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 I don't know what 3 months do. Alan, did you have any comments? Nope, they're talking with it. So we just punt on this and go back to just private roads will be approved by the town, at a town meeting? And hope that nobody comes in and wants to do a back lot in 3 units?
I don't think they can.
I've already had questions.
Actually, maybe they can.
I would
We
have-
will rely upon the rulemaking process and the town attorney to sort through this mess.
I don't think there was never the
I used to
intent.
like living in a rural town.
It's not rural enough.
I know, and we just made it worse.
I just want a supermarket somewhere in Durham. All right, so anyway, so that's what we're gonna do on that, and then we'll take that one on next time. Next time we may have Deer Creek back before us. And I will take what we talked about this evening to the selectmen and give them a heads up and let you know their thoughts, assuming I don't get dengue fever or anything else between now and next Tuesday. But thank you for your time, and thank you for coming out of the minor leagues to play with us this evening. Your thoughts are always well appreciated. Okay, Devin, turn it off. Oh, a motion to adjourn,
I'll make that motion.
Is our next meeting,
February 1st.
February 1st.
second?
All in favor, raise a hand. Now turn it off, Devin.